pretty much all of its history, Ryloth suffered greatly at the hands of slavers, as its native Twi'leks were considered ideal slaves by the psychopaths of many species. One of the periods in which the Twi'lek suffered most was the Age of the Empire, in which a government that openly detested non-humans ruled the galaxy. It's ironic then that one of the beings most responsible for the rise of the Empire was a Twi'lek himself, and the senator from Ryloth, no less, Freetar. In this video, we're going to be telling his story.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Freetar rose to power shortly before the Battle of Naboo, succeeding the controversial and notoriously corrupt Freetar as the senator for the Goalless sector, which contained his homeworld of Ryloth. Tar was originally a tax collector, a job that made him very wealthy. As was typical of wealthy Twi'leks, who were known to be eternally hungry and capable of stomaching anything, he also became quite the unit, to the point where he grew a second set of head tails, which were actually just lobes of fat and not real leku. Just like his predecessor, he was known to be incredibly corrupt and greedy. He milked his job in the Senate for every credit he could, which he spent on a lavish Galactic City penthouse, many sets of designer formal robes, a small legion of female Twi'lek escorts, and of course, a heckload of food. He was a Hutt in all but species, as many of his colleagues joked. Tar wasn't all that bad, however. He did genuinely care for Ryloth and for the Twi'lek people as a whole, and represented them well from time to time. Above all, he detested the institution of slavery, something that was banned in the Republic but was quite prominent beyond its borders. Tar was a very vocal advocate for harsher crackdowns on black market slavery in the Republic, even when it was politically inconvenient or could have caused problems with the Hutts. This was because the issue of slavery was very close to home for the corpulent senator. Ryloth, after all, was a perennial victim of black market slavers. Let's take a step back for a moment and take a quick look at the history of the Twi'leks of Ryloth. Ryloth was far from the most hospitable of worlds, as it was tidally locked, meaning that one side of the planet always faced its sun. This meant that one side of the planet was an incredibly hot, virtually uninhabitable desert, while the other was frigid and mostly lightless. The Twi'leks lived in a narrow habitable band between the Brightlands and the Nightlands, constantly wary of the planet's vicious predators and unpredictable weather patterns. The Twi'leks were still in a rather primitive state when the Republic discovered them in around 10,000 BBY. Even after making contact with the Republic, they never really developed any technology on their own. Instead, they appropriated outsider technology, which they acquired largely through negotiation and cunning. Their planet didn't have much of an interest to the outside galaxy at first, except for one resource: real spice. When they realized this, the Twilek clan leaders ramped up spice mining to trade with the outside galaxy. This proved to be a huge mistake. The spice attracted the interests of the Hutts and other shadowy factions who weren't interested in trade. They seized control of Ryloth's spice mines, enslaving its people and forcing them to dig for the spice. This wasn't the beginning of slavery on Ryloth. Slaves had been traded as part of Twilek clan politics for millennia, after all. But with Ryloth under Hutt control, slavery on Ryloth became far more extensive. Vast numbers of Twi'leks were shipped off-world over the millennia, so many that they became one of the most prolific species in the galaxy. Female Twi'leks were considered particularly desirable as slaves by the galaxy's wealthy degenerates, and many unfortunate Twi'lek girls found themselves sold to some of the most vile beings in the galaxy. Twilek slaves were bought and sold across the galaxy, and in the Republic where slavery was illegal, Twi'leks were often forced into exploitative contracts that were slavery in all but name. By the time Freetar entered the Senate, Ryloth had driven off its alien masters long ago, but slavery was still prevalent there, and he was disgusted by how badly the outside galaxy mistreated his people. This led him to joining the Rim faction, a coalition of largely conservative senators who were mostly non-human and from the Outer Rim. In the Senate, Tar and the Rim faction pushed for the Republic to scale down the scope of its interference with the Outer Rim, which won them the support of a number of wealthy corporations. Due to Ryloth's prominence and his own political acumen, Tar quickly became powerful in the Rim faction, and by 32 BBY, he was the faction's effective leader. In that year, under Tar's leadership, the Rim faction nominated Mas Amedda to the position of Vice Chair of the Senate and Senator Palpatine to the position of Supreme Chancellor. Amedda was from the Rim faction himself, and while Palpatine, a self-proclaimed centrist, wasn't, Tar believed he would be easy to control. Both candidates won their elections, and for 8 years, their respective terms went smoothly. In 24 BBY, however, the Separatist crisis began. As the Confederacy of Independent Systems began to grow, the Senate granted Palpatine emergency powers and began debating whether or not to give him even more. You would think that Orn Freetar, who disliked big government and had a general hatred for tyranny, would have either joined the Confederacy or would have been skeptical of Palpatine. This wasn't the case, however. Instead, he was one of Palpatine's most vocal supporters. He had been strongly in favor of giving Palpatine emergency powers in the first place, and he always pushed hard to give him more. It's possible that Tar's ardent support for Palpatine, which led him to becoming a staunch militarist and an advocate for war with the Confederacy, was due to the Confederacy's increased tolerance of slavery, but we don't know that for sure. What we do know is that Tar regularly talked trash about anyone who opposed Palpatine or militarization, and he did so live on the HoloNet. Orn Freetar went on air to call for the heads of any senator who sided with Dooku or opposed Palpatine on any bill, which in his mind were the same thing. He also regularly disparaged senators for other reasons, some legitimate and some less so. Allow us to cite some of our favorite examples. When a number of senators were caught profiting from Thalassian slaver activities, Tar told reporters that he thought the Republic should, quote, throw the leeches out of office and then let them have a taste of the shackles themselves. When Tykes, one of those senators, jumped bail and fled to the Confederacy, Tar declared that only the guilty flee, and was torn between calling the incident security incompetence or a separatist conspiracy. He even got called out for remarks he made after Nemoidian Senator Lot Dodd got in a speeder crash, which were as follows. He's probably calling it an outrage and thinks that the Skyway Flyer Company has a long history of anti-Nemoidian sentiment and has evidence that the transit company is horning in on Trade Federation markets. Of course, all this was much more than Orn Freetar just talking Sith. Tar, unknowingly, was acting as a cudgel for Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, beating anyone who opposed him into silence. This, of course, was all according to Palpatine's plan. Tar was a useful tool for him, one that proved instrumental in the passage of bills that gradually reshaped the Republic into an empire. In an earlier video on the fall of the Republic, we said there were 6 bills that turned the Republic into the Empire. Orn Freetar not only voted for every single one of them, but also campaigned openly in support of them, and in support of Palpatine. As a result of Tar's brilliant work, the Republic became the Empire. Ironically, few worlds suffered more from this transition than Ryloth, Tar's own homeworld. All the progress the Twi'leks had made during the Republic Golden Age was rolled back. Across the galaxy, even free Twi'leks were treated as second-class citizens, and on Ryloth, the slavers took over, emboldened by the Empire's tolerance for non-human slavery. Members of even the most influential clans on Ryloth were kidnapped and sold, and even after the Empire's fall, it took decades to undo all the damage done to the world. The Twi'leks were brutally crushed by the Empire, an empire their own senator had helped to create. It's unknown what became of Orn Freetar. He remained the senator for the Golis sector right up until the end of the Clone Wars. During the conflict, he helped the 14th Sector Army set up its headquarters, Red Tail's command, on Ryloth, and he also played a crucial role in helping ferry supplies to his homeworld when it became a battlefield. After the war ended, however, he probably faded into obscurity. He surely wasn't able to keep his position in the Senate for long under the Empire after all. So that's the story of Orn Freetar, the Twi'lek senator that unintentionally enslaved his own people. But what do you think? Are there other senators you'd like us to look at? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below. And just before you run off to the suggested videos, guys, make sure you check out our new channel called The Braved, where we dive deep into history and go through all different eras to find some of the most badass individuals and tell their stories in a high quality format there. We post weekly, so make sure you check it out. And if you're just more into music, check out our Relax Shack music channel, where we take the music there and chuck them on the videos here. And if you just want to get access to a behind the scenes Discord where you can chat to myself and the entire team there and get access to exclusive content, then consider donating to the Patreon. And if you just want to join our wider community, check us out on our main Geetsly's Discord where you can chat to myself and other Star Wars fans, and our Geetsly's Gaming Network, which is almost done, guys, so get hyped for an epic Clone Wars Garry's Mod server. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.